Welcome to Rock and Roll High School, your choice for in-depth and personal conversations with the most legendary artists in the history of contemporary music. Come with us as we explore the albums and songs that have become the soundtrack of our lives. Here's your host, Pete Ganbarg.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Rock and Roll High School. Our guest this week is a true rock and roll trailblazer, Suzi Quatro. A singer, songwriter, bass player, and actor, Suzi was the first woman to break through as a major rock star in her own right, topping the charts around the world with hits like Can the Can, 48 Crash, Devil Gate Drive, and later Stumblin In, her smash duet with Chris Norman. Born in Detroit, she moved to England in the early 70s to work with the legendary record producer Mickie Most and became an international sensation, paving the way for iconic artists to come like Joan Jett, Debbie Harry, and Chrissie Hynde. She's also appeared on TV shows like Happy Days, playing rock star Leather Tuscadero, written books including her autobiography Unzipped and her poetry collection Through My Eyes, and continues to tour and record to this day. Suzi joined us recently to talk about her remarkable journey from the Detroit garage scene to status as a rock and roll icon.
So come alive, come alive, down in Devil Gate Drive. So come alive, down in Devil Gate, down in Devil Gate, down in Devil Gate Drive. Down in Devil Gate, down in Devil Gate, down in Devil Gate Drive.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Rock and Roll High School. Very happy to be joined today from her makeshift home in Mallorca, Suzi Quatro. Hi, Suzi.
How you doing?
I'm great. So happy to talk to you and so happy to have you on the podcast. Been a fan of your music for a very long time. As an American kid who grew up in the 70s, obviously my first introduction to you was on television, but we'll get into that in a minute. What's great about your career is that it's now over 60 years going and you've never stopped. You started when you were 14 years old and you've never stopped. You're about to go on tour. We're recording this in the middle of October in 2025. You're about to go on tour in Australia for the 41st time. Australia is the other side of the world. You're going there for the 41st time.
It's crazy. Even when I say that number, I can't quite believe it. I started going there in 74. I went twice in 74, and it's just, and it's so funny because I'm not a great fan of flying, and this is so funny. It's got sense of humor, isn't it? I shall decree you great success in Australia and give you that you don't like flying. Okay, there we go. Balance at all times.
Yeah, everyone, I'm in New York and the podcast is produced out of America. Everyone in America knows who you are, but they probably don't realize that in Germany, in Australia, in the UK, you are as big a superstar as anyone who has come, before, during, or after. In America, we know Happy Days, we know Stumblin' In, maybe we know a few other things. But, Australia, there's a reason that you're touring Australia now for the 41st time.
Yes, there is.
Crazy. Well, let's start at the beginning because
Okay.
you are American, despite the fact that you are a global superstar, in these countries that we talked about. You were born outside of Detroit in Grosse Pointe? Right?
Yes, correct.
You grew up in a family of 5 kids with a musical dad. A lot of this story is told in a great 2019 documentary called Suzi Q, which I had never seen before this past week. I watched it. I loved it because not only is it, do the things that all great docs do, which is to tell your story, but there is a poignancy to it and a bittersweet nature to it because of the relationship with your sisters. And we're going to get into that. But talk about growing up as the 4th of 5 kids in a musical family with a performer dad in Grosse Pointe, Michigan in the 50s.
Well, there you go. It was a very, very musical orientated family, as you said. I do this when I talk on stage. 4 girls, 1 boy. And even though we all play 4 or 5 instruments each, we read and write and play, I can't really brag about it because it's not something just I did. The family was raised that way. So my father very much allowed us to, whatever musical lessons we so desired, he gave them to us. So that, and we grew up in a very sort of every single holiday or Christmas or Easter or whatever, and we did family shows. So I was immersed in show business from a very young age.
And your dad was a musician, right?
Yeah, he played violin as a young boy. He was a child prodigy on that. And then once he got married, he went back into his music and became a band leader and a keyboard player. And he started his own agency. And yeah, he was cool, my dad. And all the way through his life, he played all the way through his life until he got a little bit of dementia. And then he couldn't play anymore. And he called me and told me so. So I have to stop. I think he was about 84 or 85 when he actually stopped.
Right. And your dad passed when he was in his 90s, right?
Yeah, he actually lasted till 94.
Amazing.
Which is quite something, yeah.
The first musical memory that you talk about in the documentary is watching with the family Ed Sullivan in 1956 when you were 5.5 years old, and here comes Elvis. You want to talk about that?
Oh my God, yeah, because it's such a poignant memory. And don't ask me how this happens because I don't have an explanation for it. But as you know, you're American. I don't know, maybe the show was over by the time you were there, but that was religious. Every family sat down at 8 o'clock at night and watched the Ed Sullivan Show as a family because they had something for everybody. You know, there were jugglers, there were circus clowns, there were crooners, everything. And at the end, he would bring on, as he called it, something for the youngsters. So you were getting more of the younger element of music. And on came Elvis, and we're all sitting there, and he starts to do Don't Be Cruel. I'll never forget this, because as he started to sing it, my elder sister by 9 years started to scream.
Huh.
So I kind of looked at her, and I'm only 5.5, and I'm thinking, why are you screaming? What's the matter with you? And then I turned into the TV, and I actually got a little bit sort of hypnotized by it, and in I fell, and in my brain, I thought, I'm going to do that.
Wow.
Now, don't ask me how I knew that, but that's exactly how it happened.
But you knew it.
It stayed my whole life. You do sometimes have these epiphanies very young. I've heard other people say stuff like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not normal, but it does happen.
Well, you know, you talk about a priest getting a calling. Your calling came at 5.5 via Ed Sullivan and Elvis. It's crazy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in fact, it was Ed Sullivan again. I might be jumping ahead, but because we're talking about him, and it was in 1964. And again, we were watching the show. And on came the Beatles.
Right.
Okay. So first time on American television. So then we ran to the phones, me and Patty, my sister next to me. We called our two friends, Nana Mary Lou Ball, and we called Diane Baker. We decided on that phone call to form an all-girl band. So Elvis inspired me and the Beatles inspired us. And we formed a band from watching the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Right. And as the documentary shows, an all-female band was a rarity back then.
Oh.
There was, you know, maybe Goldie and the Gingerbreads coming up at the same time, and then later Ace of Cups out of Northern California. But this was a new thing, and it wasn't like it was guys with a girl singer. These were all girls, and everyone said, okay, Nancy said, I'll take drums, and Patty said, I'll be lead guitar, and you ended up on bass because nobody else was interested, right?
Correct. And you know what? As the universe throws it at you, like it always does, you just got to be paying attention. That was my instrument. Even though I played bongos, I played in the percussion section in the orchestra in school, I played classical piano. Bass was my instrument. And thank God nobody else wanted it. Thank God.
And you asked your dad if he had a bass.
Yes, I do love telling this story because when I tell it to musicians, if we're sitting at the bar after a gig or something, I can see them restraining themselves. They actually want to hit me because when I went to my dad and I said, hey, Dad, we're forming an all-girl band. He said, great. You know, so this is, first of all, different. We didn't have to argue with him. He said, great. And I said, do you have a bass guitar? He said, sure. And he gave me a 1957 Fender Precision with a Bassman amp, the Rolls Royce of bass guitars. Don't ask me, did I know I was getting that? No, I didn't know anything about bass guitars. I didn't know I was being given the best, the hardest, and the best.
And the biggest.
And the biggest. You know, and when you stand it on the ground, there's a picture of the Pleasure Seekers where I've got it standing on the ground and I'm leaning on it. It's right up to my cheekbone.
And you were petite, and that big bass kind of
I know.
overshadowed your petite frame. But it ended up, you talk about how Elvis and the Beatles inspired and influenced you. That big bass on your petite frame ended up inspiring an entire generation of female musicians, whether it's Cherie Currie of the Runaways, whether it's Katie Tunstall, who you actually made an album with a couple of years ago, whether it's Joan Jett, whether it's Kathy Valentine from the Go-Go's, whether it's Debbie Harry, whether it's Tina Weymouth. Chris France and Tina Weymouth are in the doc, and Chris proves to Tina that women can rock through your first album. I mean, it's just the gift that keeps giving. And a lot of them say, we just saw this huge bass on this small body.
I know, it makes me laugh. I don't know. Do you know, I still question it now. I was 5'2", I'm not 5'1", and I never ever felt it was heavy. And it just kind of, I don't know, maybe it's something to do with my height. Maybe it balances it out. I don't know. But when I went to see the premiere of Suzi Q at the Regent Theatre in London, it was during the COVID thing, it just 2019, just before COVID. I snuck in because I wanted to watch it with an audience. I was supposed to come at the end
Right.
and do the question and answer. I said, I'm going to see this with an audience. So I snuck in, stood on the side. And what you just said, all these people, I watched it and they all came on different points in the thing. But if you squeeze it all together and paraphrase it, they all said the same thing. They all said, we would not have even dreamed about doing what we did
Right.
had it not been for Suzi Quatro. And in all honesty, I did not know I had done that because otherwise it wouldn't have worked. If I had done it like, if I was manufactured, I wouldn't have worked. And I started to cry because it dawned on me that I did this. I didn't know. And the punchline is I called Cherie Currie the next day because she's a friend of mine. And I told her this story. And I said, Cherie, she's in California, I'm in England. I said, I just realized that by me doing what I did, I gave women all over the world permission to be different. And she went silent. And then she went, and you just got that?
Right. I mean, what's so funny about Cherie Currie and Lita Ford, who's also in the Runaways with Joan Jett, there's this great, the three of them all speak separately about you and your influence on them in the documentary. And Lita Ford tells this great story about how they had to tell Joan Jett to stop acting like Suzi Quatro.
She didn't have to.
Right.
Yeah,
we know Suzi Quatro is great, but Joan Jett can be great too. Be unique. Because she had to dye her hair, she had to change her clothes because she looked too much like Suzi Quatro.
She was such a fan, bless her. She was the one that when I used to come back to the hotel in LA, every time she'd be in the lobby with stacks of albums and stacks of pictures to sign. And,
That's crazy.
And bless her because she did go her own way. And let's be honest about it. Every artist who is successful, they have some influence from somebody somewhere. This always happens. So
of course.
I was her calling card. And then she took it much more into punk than me. And she made her own way. Thank goodness,
But we talk about everything kind of interconnecting. There's a great vignette from the documentary where Rodney Bingham-Heimer, who was actually, very instrumental in getting your music exposed through his DJing, not only on the radio, but also at his club in LA, he talks about having a photo of you in a leather bikini hanging on the wall of his club, the English Disco in LA. And one day that poster goes missing and he kind of implies that it was stolen by Joan Jett, who never really comes out and admits it, but doesn't really deny it with a devious smile either.
No, she doesn't deny it. I think she might have borrowed it.
How funny is that, right? And then, obviously Joan Jett's breakthrough song was I Love Rock and Roll, which the original version was produced by the man who discovered you and flew you to England, Mickey Most, for the Arrows. So there's all this interconnectivity going on, which is just crazy when you think about it.
But it is the way the universe throws it at you. There's always going to be connections. And when I look back now at this 61-year-long career, I'm 75 years old, I'm still touring the world. Let's put it this way. Being a successful rock and roll, the first one to have worldwide success, I know that now, which I didn't know before. It had to fall to somebody like me who did not know she was doing it.
Right.
If it had been manufactured in any sense of the word,
Right.
it would not have worked.
Right.
It had to be something very natural. So I always went, okay, why me? Because that's why. Because I didn't think about it. I didn't know I was doing it. I didn't know it was weird. How can I know it's weird when my father happily gave me a bass guitar without another word?
Right. Right.
So what's strange about that?
You just kind of followed the voice from that television. The light bulb goes off in 1956 for 5.5-year-old Suzi. I'm going to do this. And that became your mantra, and nothing
It
was
did.
going to stop you. So you mentioned that you formed this all-girl band after the Beatles are on Ed Sullivan. The band is called the Pleasure Seekers, and they actually get a record deal, and you record some songs. You become the lead singer. You find your voice. There's actually a song called What a Way to Die that the Pleasure Seekers released in 1965 when you were 15 years old.
Your love it fluctuates, baby, and everybody knows. But the temperature always stays the same. On a nice cold bottomless road, so baby, come on over. Come on over to my side. Come on over. But I may not live past 21, but wow, what a way to die.
I was listening to What a Way to Die. I'd never heard it. And it's like early garage rock, coming out of
It is.
Detroit. And you think about the great music that came out of Detroit at the time, you were surrounded by these great artists like the MC5 and like Alice Cooper and Iggy Pop and such a fertile ground of music, forgetting Motown for a second. But the Pleasure Seekers not only made music that sounded like garage rock, but you were a quote unquote show band. So you guys danced and you performed and you sang, and the band gets signed to Mercury Records. Talk about that. Talk about coming back from the road and all of a sudden you're on festival dates with the MC5 and Alice and the Stooges, and the band with your costumes and your choreography might not be en vogue anymore.
Absolutely not. It's funny how the universe throws it at you. And in my opinion, you must take every single experience, whatever it is, and turn it into a learning ground, whatever that might be. So I was the lead singer. I used to call myself Suzi Soul. I took all that on board. I did Otis Redding. I did James Brown. Anything male was mine. So I was bass player, front lead singer. And in the Pleasure Seekers, because the clubs wanted people to come in, they hired this all-girl band to bring in the customers.
Right.
So we very quickly became more of a show band because that's what they wanted. We had costumes, we traded instruments, did Temptation dance steps. We had a Sergeant Pepper set, we had a Top 40 set, we had a Beatles Magical Mystery Tour, Sergeant Pepper set. Yeah,
So it was a show band.
it was a rock and roll band, but it was edging towards a show band. Absolutely.
And those gigs were booked by your older brother, Mickey, right?
Well, at first we had one of my sisters who was the keyboard player. It was her first husband
Right.
who managed and sort of got us bookings and all that. He did very well. He got us into New York City and at the Teen Fair in Seattle, and he did very, very well for us. Then they got divorced, and my brother kind of took over management.
Right.
And he was a very successful agency, my brother, although a brilliant keyboard player. He also had a very successful putting on some of the first festivals in America.
He also had his own band. He got signed to a
He
record
did.
deal
Absolutely.
called the Mickey Quatro Jam Band.
Yeah, one of the finest keyboard players you ever want to hear. He really is talented. Anyway, he put the Pleasure Seekers on his festival.
Right.
I believe it was the Cincinnati Pop Festival by memory. So we'd never done one of these before. So we went up there with our costumes and our show set, and we didn't go down good because everybody else was tie-dye T-shirts, barefoot, and jamming.
Right.
And we were this clean-cut show, and we didn't go down. First time ever, we usually stormed it, So we had a big meeting when we got home, talked about it all. We decided time to change, time to start to write our own songs, time to get heavier, time to stop being a show band. And we brought my little sister, Nancy, in to start singing, fabulous voice, and I went to the background. So I was from the entire front person to the background, mainly playing bass. I did about 4 or 5 songs a night.
And the Pleasure Seekers changed their name, right?
Change your name to Cradle. And again, the universe throwing it at you. Although I didn't like going in the background, what I did like was I really got to become good on my guitar, on my
Right.
bass.
Right.
Because I didn't have the upfront duties combining. All of a sudden, I was a serious bass player.
Right.
When that's the band Mickey saw.
Mickey Most, not
Mickey Most.
Mickey, your
Not my
brother. Yes. So let's talk about Mickey Most. Mickey Most may be a name that a lot of people don't know today as much as they should, but Mickey's a legendary British record producer responsible for iconic artists like the Animals and Hot Chocolate and Herman's Hermits, had his own,
Jeff Beck,
and Jeff Beck, of course, had his own
The
record
Animals.
label and the Animals, his own record label and studio, both called RAK, R-A-K. I was there a few years ago, and his office at that point had been untouched, and you saw all of his gold records. And so Mickey Most comes over to Detroit with Jeff Beck, and your brother Mickey finds out about this and has Mickey Most and Jeff Beck come to see Cradle perform.
Correct. And I have to also mention Cozy Powell was there too. They were coming over to use Motown Studios. Okay.
Right.
So Mickey comes to the gig. This is a great story. We do our set, and I came up, and I did. And I remember I was Miss Attitude, absolutely Miss Attitude with a vengeance. And I kind of went up and did my 2 songs, and I said, "Here's one I wrote called Brain Confusion." I did this original song, and then I remember going, "Going to a party at the county jail," and I did Jailhouse Rock.
Wow.
And at the end of the show, and I didn't hear this till years later, Jeff Beck apparently nudged Mickey while I was playing and singing, and he went, "Mickey, bass player." Mickey said, "I got it already."
Wow.
So then when we were done, Mickey, motioned me to come back, and we sat in the little seats there, and he said, "I want to record you in London." Basically, that's how it went.
You, not Cradle.
Not Cradle. But he didn't specify at that point just me. He asked me if I'd like to make an album, and I didn't know he meant just me. He then flew my brother to New York for a meeting, and he told my brother that he didn't want to break up a family band, but he only wanted me. Okay? So then my brother came back, and it was discussed, not with me, but with Patty, who led the band, my sister Arlene, who was the keyboard player, my brother, and my dad. Should we tell Suzi? And they decided no.
They didn't tell you, right?
So, and I understand their reason. Sure, he doesn't understand that my dad wanted him to take the whole band, But luckily, about 3 months after that, the band was starting to fall apart at the seams. And I went to my elder sister Arlene's house, and I was really upset. I said, "This is my whole life. What am I going to do?" And she said, "Oh, don't be crazy. Call Mickey." I said, "Why?" I said, "We've been sending him recordings of the band, and he hasn't really done." She said, "Suzi," and she finally told me, he only wanted you.
Wow. So there were several months where your family knew it, but you didn't know it.
But I didn't, for whatever reasons. And so when I got back from that visit with my sister, I picked up the phone. I called collect because I didn't have the money.
Huh.
And Mickey picked up the phone. It was so funny. They said, "Suzi Quatro, call collect." He said, "I'll take the charges." And he said, "So hello, Suzi Quatro." He always called me Suzi Quatro, my full name. He said, "So tell me, is the band breaking up now?" I said, "Yep." And he said, "Well, you want to come to London?" I said, "Absolutely."
Wow.
And that was it. That was basically it.
Well, back to the night that Mickey and Jeff Beck come and see Cradle, and they both nudge each other and say, "It's the bass player, it's the bass player." That night after the Cradle gig, Mickey Most invites you alone to go to the Motown studio, and you end up jamming with Jeff Beck, Cozy Powell on drums on the Meter song Sissy Strut classic. And, again, you're super young, and you're jamming with Jeff Beck and Cozy Powell at Motown. How was that?
I couldn't believe it. But you know what? Again, I didn't stop and think about it. I'm up in the control room with the 3 guys, and I look down and I see the empty pit, and I see a bass guitar against the wall, and me being there. I said, "Right, gonna show you guys what I got." And I went to start to play, and then Jeff came down, and then Cozy came, and we started doing the Sissy Strut.
You just mentioned the pit. The Pit is where the Funk Brothers recorded every single Motown classic hit. And there you are as a teenager jamming with Jeff Beck and Cozy Powell.
And playing Jameson's bass.
Wow.
Now, how cool is that? How many musicians can say that?
So you left the Rolls Royce of basses at home, and you had to settle for James Jamerson's bass. There you go.
I still have that bass, by the way, and we use it. The one that my dad gave me, we use it in the studio.
Wow.
It doesn't travel.
Right.
That bass doesn't
Right.
travel.
Right. So you go to London. Patty, your older sister, joins Fanny, which is also a really famous all-girl
Pretty good
rock and roll
group, yeah.
band. And she
Yeah.
played on the biggest hit they had in America, Butterboy. That's her playing on there.
Go, baby, go. Get it on, boy. Show what you know. Oh, there's a fire down below. So go, baby, go. Ooh, it doesn't matter to me. No.
It is, yes.
There are all these degrees of separation with fame and celebrity. You mentioned your older sister, Arlene. Her daughter is the actress Sherilyn Fenn,
I
who
know.
everyone loved here from Twin Peaks. She played Audrey Horne. It was amazing. So there's a lot of talent in this extended family of yours.
There sure is. There sure is. A
So
lot.
when you're 20 years old, were you 20? Were you 19?
I was 21.
21 years old. You
Yeah, I
go over
landed
there.
there October 31st, 1971. I landed in the UK.
Wow. So you're 21 years old, and it's just you and your bass guitar, your big bass guitar. You stay in a little tiny hotel room with no money, no friends, no family, crying yourself to sleep every night. But again, that voice, you're not going home. This is what you're going to make it.
I tell you, this is the absolute truth. Yes, sure, I was very lonely and never, even in my saddest moments, on the floor crying, did I consider for 1 millisecond, not 1 millisecond, to go home. I had said, I'm going there to be famous, and I won't be happy until I am. Thank
Right.
God. I was not going to fail.
Right. One other thing that we skipped over is that when you got the offer from Mickey to come over to England, just you, not the band, you had also gotten an offer from Jack Holtzman at Elektra Records. And Jack Holtzman said, I want to put a band around you and make you the next Janis Joplin. And the reason you went with Mickey is Mickey said, I want to put a band around you and make you the first Suzi Quatro.
I did figure that Mickey had actually seen me as I am. And I know Jack very well, but I mean, I'm not Janis Joplin. I'm not a blues singer.
Right.
I'm a rock and roller.
Right.
And Mickey saw me. I went with the rock, and I was a fan of Mickey's anyway because I was a huge Donovan fan,
Yeah.
and I used to see the back of the albums, and Mickey's name was all over it. And
Right.
I used to think I like this guy's production.
Right. Right. So you get over there, and again, you're a kid, you're 21. Your family is back in Detroit. There's a funny, kind of like cringe funny moment in the doc where your dad records the family talking together as a gift for you when you're in London and sends you a cassette, and you're so excited to hear your family's voice, and they start saying not nice things about your bass playing. I mean, it's like,
know.
wow, that must have been
I-
so hard.
It was hard. I have it actually on cassette, and I had it pressed on a CD, so I never lest I never forget. And it's been a source of conversation is from the time it was a known story. Nobody can figure it out, you know. Everybody has a different opinion.
It's got to be hard on your sisters because
Sure,
you were
sure.
all starting together and they're left behind. And here you are off in London following your own muse and with the guidance of Mickey Most and his wife, Chris, who's in the doc, to do something that they're not getting a chance to do.
Yeah, I can understand where that anger and resentment came from. But what it is, after the tears, there's no other way to put it. It gave me balls of steel.
Right. Right.
That's it. That's what it did. After crying about it, I went, right. That's what you think, is it? Watch me.
Right.
And it really was character building in a way.
Right. Well,
You have to.
you know, it's the old saying, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger.
Yeah, absolutely true. That's absolutely true. But it remained the elephant in the room for a long time. And I must say it did give me cause to not enjoy my success as much as I should have done.
A little later on, chronologically, there's a heartbreaking moment in the doc where in 1974 you're only 24 years old, but you've had now success in the UK, and you've had success in Australia and Germany, and you go back to your childhood home, you go to your childhood bedroom, and nothing's left. Your clothes are gone, your records are gone, your posters are gone. You ask your mom where your clothes are, and she says, "Oh, your sister Patty cut them and she made them into outfits for herself." And you say in the doc, so they kind of just wrote me out of their lives like I didn't exist anymore, and that was a real wake-up call.
That was a wake-up call. I had to deal with that. And doesn't that kind of say it all? She cut up my clothes and made up
Oh my
stuff for herself.
God. Oh my God.
Mhm.
One
Yeah.
other thing about the doc is that you are a poet as well as a songwriter and a
Oh, big
performer.
time.
And
Big time.
your poetry weaves throughout the doc almost like a commentary on everything that's happening. So when the doc is telling the story about the family dynamic, your poetry is almost like the inner voice expressing how you were feeling about it at the same time.
Absolutely. And that's something I have to do. I have to always write. I've always done. Just released my third poetry book.
Yeah, you've released a ton of books, novels,
Yep.
coffee table books,
Absolutely.
your autobiography, Unzipped, of course, and 3 volumes of poetry. 8 books, I think,
Yep.
overall. That's crazy. For
I,
somebody who didn't graduate high school, how about that?
I know.
Back to Mickey and Chris Most and Rack and 21-year-old Suzi Quatro. You're writing a bunch of songs, nothing's really going on. You tell Mickey, "Mickey, I need a band. I need to do gigs." And he says, "Okay."
He did. And I advertised in Melody Maker, and I found 2 musicians, a guitar player and a drummer, to begin with, an American guitar player, actually, and a Welsh drummer. And we played for a bit, played for a bit, played for a bit. Then the American guitar player left, and Lenny came in, my ex, my guitar player, was with me for a long time, a big part of the Suzi Quatro sound. He came in, and then we got another, and then my drummer left a week before Can the Can came out, which is nuts. He had played on it, and a week before the
Ay,
record
ay,
came out.
ay.
I know, and Mickey was so mad. He said, "Get yourself a drummer." So we got the drummer who was with me forever. And then we were rehearsing, and we were looking for another guitar player. And somebody came down the stairs with a piano. And "Oh, is this where?" I said, "We're looking for a guitar." He said, "Oh, well, I'm here now." So he sat up and played, and we had the band.
Wow.
Again, the universe throws it at you. And that lineup, Alistair McKenzie, Dave Neal, Len Tucky, and myself, we made all the hits.
Right. And
All the hits. So.
right. And that band, you start gigging, you get really good, and you go and you open for the band Slade, who were huge at the time.
Yep, they were.
And Slade's audience is a tough audience. That was a tough gig for a 20-minute opening slot. You had to be good.
You did have to be good. In fact, Noddy, when he came on my This Is Your Life, he said that the fans used to throw things at the opening act.
Right.
Actually, quite funny.
Right.
They loved me. They loved me.
Yeah,
So
and, crazy.
it was just and so we had our sound from that tour. That's when obviously you do a tour, you get your sound together,
Right.
and we were doing all original songs.
Right.
So there was the band.
Right. You're
There
putting
was
in
the
your 10,000 hours. You're getting good.
Absolutely.
And then one day, the songwriting team of Mike Chapman and Nicky Chin show up at Rack. They come to meet Mickey. They had obviously had success with the band The Sweet. And according to the documentary, Mickey's wife, Chris, thinks that they would be good for you. That's what she says. And then Mickey recommends them to you because even though he's a brilliant record producer, sometimes the most brilliant of record producers can't figure out a specific artist, and he could not figure out how to produce you.
He couldn't. We tried everything. And Mickey is an excellent producer. But I always, when I look back on it now and I listen to what we did together, he was too polite with me.
Right.
And Mike did it with the rough edge, which is what I am.
Right.
I am a rough edge. That's my middle name, you know. Somebody once said to me, behind that rough exterior, there's a rougher one waiting to get
That's funny.
It's funny.
That's
But
funny.
yeah, so Mike came in, he came and saw a gig, and he heard all original songs, and they went away that night and came back the next day with Can the Can on a tape. And we all went down into the little rehearsal area. And I have to say, I mean, the tape was Mike playing guitar. You just don't give Mike a guitar because you just don't want to be in the same room. He just wails, and he's so loud. So we all put our little 2 cents in.
Right.
And I can honestly say that that song came together with us four musicians.
Right. He wrote the song, but the band created the
Yes.
record with him. And Mike Chapman, for those that don't know the name, is as brilliant a creative mind as a record producer and a songwriter as you will find. Everything
Absolutely.
from My Sharona from the Knack that he produced to all the hits that he had with you and with The Sweet and,
Blondie?
Blondie, who hired Mike Chapman because of your records.
I know. It's amazing.
The late Clem Burke is in the doc, and he talks about how it was his idea hearing Can the Can to say, "Hey, this guy should produce our records."
And they're all friends of mine. I know them all. Bless. Hello, Clem. A little wave, yeah.
Crazy. So Mike writes Can the Can right after meeting the band, and he keeps pushing your vocal range higher and higher and higher to a point where you're not comfortable singing in that range. He's like, that's what you're going to do for this song.
But that's okay. I trusted Mike.
Right.
And so if I ever argued, and Mike had the vision, he saw me, he said, bass up, vocals up. He wanted the bass to be really featured because I'm a bass player.
Right.
And he said to me, when I was arguing about the key, he said, Suzi, trust me, something happens to your voice when you get in the higher range. I don't know what it is, but it gives it this electricity.
Right.
So trust me.
And he
So
was right.
whenever I was straining to do a note, he'd hit it and he'd say, now come in here. And I'd go in and I'd listen. I go, okay, I got it.
Right.
I surrender.
So make a stand for your man, honey. Try to can the can. Put your man in the can, honey. Get him while you can. Can the can. Can the can. If you can. Well, can the can.
That's what makes a brilliant songwriter so brilliant, is when he can see the band and he's like, you know what? You're a bass player. I'm going to make the bass playing a major part of it, which I don't think Mickey Most was doing it when he was trying to produce the band.
No, and Mike got quite angry. Not angry, but when Mickey played him, I think it was Rolling Stone, played him something that we had recorded, and Mike said, oh, you didn't really do much with the bass, did you? So
Right.
Mike put me way up in the mix.
Right.
And the best song to listen to, and I'm just discussing this with my son and my engineer for my next album because he's mixing it at the moment. I
Awesome.
said, if you want to hear the Suzi Quatro bass and vocal sound perfect, not in the real high range, in my not the high range, my medium range, listen to She's in Love with You.
Don't take advantage of a lack of understanding just because you think you could. Treat her right, treat her good, take her home and make her feel the way she should. 'Cause she's in love with you. That's all she wants to do. She'll never let you down, she'll never fool around, 'cause she's in love with you.
The bass is in your face and the vocal has a certain sound. I said, that is my sound.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, great song.
Mm.
It's interesting because you guys were songwriters as well, but I've heard you say that the reason that both you and Mickey thought that Mike should be writing is because Mike was great at the 3.5-minute single.
That's what he was good at, yes. And I didn't want the pressure of that, to tell you the truth. But to be honest, Mike said very early on, I don't believe in putting crap on B-sides. So we're going to make the B-sides great. So we put these great songs, all of ours, Lenny and I were writing together then, and a lot of them could have been flipped.
Right.
A lot of them could have been flipped. And Mike, actually on a couple of them, and if he was talking, he would have to own up to this. A couple of times, he said, oh, this is just a minute. And he put in an extra bar of music that didn't quite fit to make it a little bit less commercial.
Oh, that's funny.
But we did have great B-sides, and that's what he wanted.
And back then, just thinking, with the business hat on, back then, the B-side sold just as much as the A-side, so your mechanical royalties as a songwriter were just as many, just as much.
And it worked. It worked for a long time. I didn't want to rock the boat. And in fact, I'll tell you a funny story. I was recording Mama's Boy. I was doing the vocals to that. And I was singing away, and I stopped. I said, Mike, he's in the control room. I said, for God's sake, next time you write me a song, can you give me a space to breathe vocally? And he said, Susie, that's your song.
That's very funny. Ha ha ha.
Whoops. But that shows you how connected we were in the
Right.
writing of things. He didn't ever bring me a song that wasn't written for me.
For you, right. Which
It's very important. Yeah,
and Can the Can, which was a huge hit
yeah, it was.
in Europe and Australia. That was the first song he wrote for the band. That goes to
Yes.
#1 in UK, France, Germany, Spain, Australia, Switzerland. You're playing Top of the Pops in May 1973. You're 22 years old, and your whole life changes because you can't even go to the pub after that.
No, yeah, I remember that. We had just been on that. It was like similar to American Bandstand. It was like the show to watch all the hits.
Oh,
Top of the
it was
Pops.
bigger. You were on Top of the Pops, your life changes.
Yeah, your life does change. And I remember we watched it and we went out to the local pub around the corner from the flat that we lived in, and I got mobbed. I walked in and they went, there she is. I'm thinking, there who is it? They were
Right.
talking about, you're looking around wondering and your life does change.
Right.
It
It
changes.
was never the same out of that.
Never
And
the same.
after that, and you were 22 years old. In the doc, talk about a young Kathy Valentine from the Go-Go. She hears Can the Can and she says, quote, my brain literally exploded.
Oh, bless her.
You
Bless
know?
her. She's a good friend. She came over and spent some time with me about 3 or 4 months ago. Came over to the house and we had some dinner together. She's a nice girl. Yeah, she said she had no idea that could happen.
Yeah.
That you could be a girl.
Look at what you
and play
did.
an instrument.
You know,
Yeah, look what she did. Sure.
I mean, look at what you did. And what you did inspired what they did. Mike Chapman says in the doc that even though, people try to pigeonhole your sound, the scene in 1973, 74, when all these hits are happening, it was kind of the peak of glam rock, even though you guys weren't part of that movement. But according to Mike in the doc, you're challenging Mark Bolan and T-Rex, you're challenging Slade, you're challenging David Bowie, you're challenging The Sweet for the #1 spot on the charts. So according to Mike, you were almost an integral part of that glam rock scene, even though you weren't glam.
It is a strange thing that and I did get caught up in that description because I was having my hits at that time. But as Mike always says, and as I always say, I'm not glam. I didn't have any makeup on whatsoever.
Right.
I had a plain black leather suit, one half of a platform on.
Right.
And I was rock based.
Right, you were rock based. So let's talk. One thing we haven't mentioned yet is the leather and the jumpsuits. So when you say that you were inspired by Elvis when you were 5.5 years old, and then you were inspired by the Beatles on Ed Sullivan in '64, you were also inspired by Elvis's comeback special in '68 with the leather.
100%. I think we were somewhere in America touring and we were watching it on the TV. And leather, that was it for me when I saw this. I was going to wear leather when my time came.
Right.
And in fact, when Can the Can was recorded and Mickey had the acetate there, but that's as an old-fashioned expression for you. Boy, oh boy, people won't even know what the hell that is, will they? Anyway, he was playing
Think of it as an old-fashioned vinyl type demo, kids.
Exactly. It was called an acetate. And Mickey was in the office and playing it. We had our image meeting, just him and me. And he said, Susie, this is going to be a #1. He was right.
Wow.
He said, now we need to discuss your image. What do you want to wear? I said, leather. And he said, nope. I said, yes. He said, nope. He said, Susie, it's old fashioned. It's been done. I said, not by me. So he said, okay, you can wear leather because I always get my way. And then he said, what about a jumpsuit? And me and my naivety, I said, great. I had no idea it was sexy. I thought it was sensible because I could jump around and everything would stand. I had no idea.
Comfortable.
Yeah, comfortable. And it made sense. It made logical sense. I didn't know it was sexy until I saw the photos back from the first photo session. And Mickey said, come here and look in the thing here with me. I used to have a little eyeglass and you look at the contact sheet. I'm really going back in time now. And he said, look at this. And I remember seeing the picture, the iconic shot.
Right.
He said, this is the one I'm going to use. And I went, oh dear.
Right.
I'm a good Catholic girl.
Right. Oh no, what's about to happen here in my one-piece leather jumpsuit?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Crazy, crazy. So Can the Can's number one. 48 Crash, the follow-up, is number one in Australia, number two in Germany, number three in the UK. You start having all these hits, Daytona Demon, Devil Gate Drive, Wild One. And then, even though these are not hits in your home country of America, you get on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine in early January 1975. You're not even 25 years old. You're on the cover of Rolling Stone. You hadn't even broken in America yet.
That's good, isn't it? I started to tour there in 1974, and
You had
like
some
my,
you had some good opening acts, I hear.
I did Kiss and Blue Oyster Cult.
How about that?
I told Gene Simmons I'd teach him how to play bass.
And then your
And
band opened for Alice Cooper.
yes, we were asked to do the Welcome to My Nightmare tour, which was, I think, 85 shows we did. But Mike Chapman says in the documentary, there was a little space of the hit singles that the American market missed, a lot of the acts, you know. But they knew me. I got
Right,
a lot of play on the FM stations. I sold albums,
right,
all shook up bottom end of the charts, different bits and pieces. So
right.
I could tour there and be successful. And then I did the opening slot for Alice. And then I was on the cover of Rolling Stone, which was great. And then, of course, as you said before, Happy Days.
Right.
That
And
changed the game. That
right.
changed the game. Yeah.
And ironically, the first song that you perform on Happy Days, if you go back and you watch the first episode that Leather Tuscadero debuts in, is an Elvis song. So
Yeah.
Elvis is everywhere, as somebody once said.
He's been on my shoulder since the age of 5.5. He really has. If I was to, I'm not going to bore you. There's at least, 15 Elvis epiphanies through my life. And I'm glad that I didn't meet him.
Well, you had an opportunity. Why don't you tell the story about the opportunity to
I
meet
did.
him because he was a fan of your cover of All Shook Up?
He was. I was in Memphis and we were on tour and I was in the hotel room and the phone rang and All Shook Up was in the lower end of the charts. I have to say lower end, but it was in there. I have the Billboard charts in my ego room at home. And I had a phone call and it was his people. They said, this is Elvis Presley people. And then he got on the phone and he invited me to go to Graceland while I was in town. He said, your version of All Shook Up is the best since my own.
Wow.
Unbelievable. But I didn't go. I didn't go. And people always say, why not? Because I actually I wasn't scared of it. I just wasn't quite ready to meet him yet. And I had no idea that it was going to be too late in 2 years, you
Right.
know?
If you had to go back in time knowing then what you know now, would you have given a different answer?
Well, if there was any way of predicting that he would be gone in 2 years, I probably would have taken, that was 74 in 3 years, I would have taken the opportunity. But I thought there'd be another time and place where I would feel more comfortable with it, you know?
Mm. And then later, you wrote a song that
Hmm.
not only was a tribute to Elvis, but you got the great James Burton on guitar and the great Jordan Ayers on vocals to perform with you.
I know. And I've just now in this past month put it back into the show. I wrote this song for the Back to the Drive album, and Andy Scott was producing and Steve Grant. We were recording it, and I remember Andy turning to me and he said, Suzi, this is too good. I said, what do you mean it's too good? He said, this is too good to stop here.
Wow.
He said, get a hold of James, get a hold of the Jordanaires, and let's go over there and do it. Great idea. So I knew them, so I got their numbers and emails and whatever. And they both kind of said the same thing initially. They said, before they heard the song, they said, oh my God, Suzi, we have been inundated with requests to do, tributes to him and all that. But because it's you, send us the song, which I did. I sent them the song. And within 5 minutes, they were on the phone and they said, book the studio now. So there I am in Nashville. Like you said, James on guitar, the Jordanaires, and I'm recording my tribute to Elvis. It was The Stuff Dreams Are Made Of. And there's a beautiful, you can YouTube it, there's a beautiful video of that. Just beautiful.
And the lyrics of the song are all taken from Elvis lyrics. So
Yes.
if you're listening to the song, not only do you hear Elvis's song lyrics in your song, you hear the iconic vocals of Elvis's backing singers, the Jordanaires. You hear the iconoclastic guitar of Elvis's guitar player, James Burton. And here you are singing this song that you wrote, made up a lot of Elvis's song titles and lyrics.
I got a woman, she's my happiness. Don't leave me now in my loneliness. Heartbreak Hotel, I was counting on you. I thought I had a lot of living to do. A blue moon of Kentucky shines. Burning love makes suspicious minds. Mystery train heading for the light. Graceland star burning bright.
But that's not why I'm bringing this up. Why I'm bringing this up is because talk about everything inspiring everything else. At the end of the documentary, Cherie Currie from The Runaways mentions that the director of the film asks her to write an original song to close the documentary, which she does. And as the credits roll in the documentary, there is a live version of this song that she wrote. And you come out and you start playing it with her at the end of the song. It's a great moment. But the lyrics are Suzi Quatro song titles and lyrics.
I know.
Like what you did for Elvis, Cherie is doing
did
for
for me.
you.
I know.
Talk
Isn't
about paying it forward. It's beautiful.
Isn't that funny? It is that it's all the universe throwing at you, and one thing leads to another. It is one big ball of wax at the end of the day.
You mentioned Happy Days. Talk about getting the call from Gary Marshall and the producers of Happy Days to Happy Days was the biggest television show in the mid-70s in America. And they give you the opportunity to play a fictionalized character of yourself named Leather Tuscadero.
I had no idea. I was in Tokyo and I was doing a show, and I got the call to come and read for this part. I think it was Toby Mamus. He was my publicist then, and he said, I didn't know the show. He said, Suzi, believe me, you want to come over for this. So I did. I wore my own, I had no idea what the character was or anything. I arrived at Paramount Studios ready to read for whatever this part was. And I had my own leather jacket and, jeans on, like you do. And Gary Marshall came over to me and he said, oh, that's really clever of you to dress in the part. I said, what the hell are you talking about? What do you mean dress in the part? What do you mean? I had no idea. He said, it's called Leather Tuscadero. I said, well, I had no idea. Anyway, I got the part. And here's one epiphany that I have to tell. I met the Fonz. I met Jerry Paris, the director. I met a few other people. Then they said, okay, now we need to discuss you, so go back to your hotel. So I went back to my hotel. I switched on the TV and I sat virtually right next to the phone waiting for the phone call. So the TV's on in the background, waiting for the phone call. The phone rings, it's Paramount, and they said, not only do we want you for the 2-part episode, we want you for 3 seasons. And I was all excited, and right at that moment, simultaneously, it came on the TV screen, The King is Dead.
Wow.
You can't make this stuff up.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That is crazy. And just to finish that story off, I came back in December to film my first episodes. Gary Marshall comes onto the set. I'm in rehearsal, comes onto the set with this guy. And he said, Suzi, I'd like you to meet somebody. This is Nudie, and he's going to be making your clothes.
Oh,
for your Nudie is Elvis's personal tailor.
Yeah, with all the rhinestone jumpsuits and all
But
that
you
stuff.
can't make this stuff up. He brings them over and says he's going to be making your clothes. So like I said, there was a connection from day one.
Right. And Elvis was, and still is everywhere.
Right here.
Crazy. So Happy Days with your role as Leather Tuscadero, which I think you ended up in 7 episodes, I
Yeah, it was
believe,
over 3 seasons.
performing a lot of music. And then Mike Chapman's business partner, as you talk about in the doc, Nicky Chin, goes to Paramount and says, we don't think this is the right thing for Suzi Quatro to continue doing because she's a rock star and this is not something a rock star should be doing. Is that correct?
Yeah, he shouldn't have done that. He had no right to do that. And I didn't know it till a long time later. But saying that, they were going to do spin-off, of the
Right,
character.
right,
And a big part of me didn't want to be forever known as nothing but Leather Tuscadero because I was very good friends with Henry.
right,
And he said he could never not be the Fonz.
right, right.
So, like I said, the universe throws it anyhow it does. And I actually had another big hit at that time with If You Can't Give Me Love, and I was out touring.
If you can't give me love, honey, that ain't enough. Let me go look for somebody else. If you can't give me feelings with old-fashioned meanings, just stay in love with yourself. You can't give me love, love. If 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 you can't give me love.
Which is why I didn't do as many episodes as I should because it always had to be fitted in to go to LA with my touring schedule.
Right.
So it was never easy because that was my main. That was the crust I earned was being a rock and roll singer. So they had to fit me in between when I could come in when they had the scripts and blah blah blah. But yeah, Nicky shouldn't have done that. I'm not happy that he did that, but maybe it all happened for the right reason.
Right. And you talk about Henry Winkler, he's all over the documentary saying very, very
Exactly.
beautiful things about you. And you've mentioned that you and Henry are still friendly and still in touch, and you and Ron Howard are still friendly and still in touch.
We are, and Donnie and Anson, we're all good. Ronnie gave me on Unzipped. I was getting quotes for my autobiography. I mean, this is so Ronnie. I said, will you quote me for my book? He said, sure. And he sent me 2 pages. I said, Ron, I wanted a quote. And he said, I always remember because he's such a sweet guy. And he said, I wanted to tell this story. So I had to pick out a quote from him. He told her he was like writing a movie, And
That's
he
so
he
funny.
gave me one of the finest compliments. I always remember we were rehearsing a scene and he said to me out of nowhere, he said, Suzi, don't ever take acting lessons. I thought this was an insult. I said, why? He said, because whatever you have is natural and it would ruin you.
Mm.
I take that as a big
A
compliment.
100%.
100%.
And then once America is introduced to Suzi Quatro, then Mike Chapman writes a new song for you. And I believe the story is that you and a bunch of the other rack artists are in Europe at a party, and you and Chris Norman from Smokey get on stage and start palling around together, singing together. And what was it Mike's idea to say, oh, it was in Dusseldorf, right? Where you and
Yeah.
the members of Smokey are at a party. And Mike says, Susie's playing bass. Chris was there with his arm around her. They're singing into the mic. I thought it would be a fantastic duet idea because they look so great together. The next day I was in the studio with Susie. And during a break, I came up with a line, our love is alive. I looked at Susie and said, what about this? How would you like singing it with Chris?
Our love is alive, and so we begin, foolishly laying our hearts on the table, stumbling in. Our love is a flame, burning within. Now and then, firelight will catch us, stumbling in.
It was nearly correct, but it was, and because I always give credit where credit is due. I'm a big one for that. So I was trying to get somebody at this star-studded party to come up with me and just have fun with the band that was there. And nobody wanted to do it. No, we're not working tonight. But I said, well, surely that's the point, that you're not working tonight. So this is fun. Nobody did this. I grabbed Chris. I didn't ask him. I grabbed him. I threw him up on stage. I said, come on. We started to jam. And it was my ex who nudged Mike. And he said, Mike, look at that. And Mike went,
Wow.
Mm.
Wow, you're excellent. You're talking about.
Yeah,
Wow,
it
that's
was him.
crazy.
It was him. And what happened was, because it's a great story, we were in the studio the next day making, I think, the If You Knew Susie album at the EMI studios. And Mike came in. I always remember this. He came in, as is Mike. And he said to the engineer, set up a mic for me. Quick, 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 set up a mic. Plug my guitar in. Susie, go to the keyboards. I said, okay. Okay. He said, now, whatever I sing, can you go da 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 da? I said, okay.
Wow.
So he played the guitar, he went, our love is alive. And I went da 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 da. And so we begin da 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 da. And we did this little bit of the chorus, and he went, great, give me the tape, and I'll have the verse for you tomorrow.
Wow. That is crazy. And that song is probably, if you ask any Americans who grew up listening to the radio in the late 70s about Suzi Quatro, that'll probably be the first song they mention, Stumblin' In. Huge hit in America. I
Huge hit.
remember as a kid, that was one of the biggest songs of the year in 78. Ironically, it wasn't as big a hit in England as it was here in Australia and
But there's a
Germany.
reason.
Probably
reason for that.
because it didn't sound like Can the Can and it didn't
No,
sound like 48.
no.
No?
No, you got to say the reason.
Tell us.
Because it's a crazy story. Chris was still in Smokey, so we played on the record because he didn't want to get any ruffled feathers, but the jealousy existed.
Right.
So we played on the album. We played on the record, my band, and he said, "Okay, I will do again, not to ruffle Smokey's feathers. I will do a video," and that said, "I won't do any TV shows." So we made a video for Stumblin' In.
Right.
Then Top of the Pops, you mentioned them before. The Gods, they called and said, this is going into the charts.
Right.
We're going to do it as a shot for the top.
Okay.
And we need you to come on live.
And Chris said no.
Chris said no.
Wow.
And we lost the record in England. Can you believe that? And Chris should have known better because he was in a band that depended on Top of the Pops.
Right. Smokey had big hits, Living Next Door to Alice.
Absolutely. So that was a really dumb thing to do, but whatever. Everybody called him and he just wouldn't give in. So consequently, it wasn't a huge hit in England, no.
But in the spirit of you can't keep a hit record down, around a year or two ago, an Australian DJ named Cyril releases his version of Stumblin' In, which is a massive hit internationally. It's 4 times platinum in Australia, and it's the gift that keeps giving. So when you leave next week to go play your 41st exclamation point tour of Australia, there are going to be kids, I'm sure of it, who are going to be seeing you for the first time because they know you from the Cyril version of Stumblin' In.
Yes, and the beat goes on.
It's crazy.
Our love is alive. So we begin. Foolishly laying our hearts on the table, stumbling in. Our love is a flame, burning within. Now and then, firelight will catch us, stumbling in.
The beat goes on. In fact, Cyril flew from, and I always get this wrong, was it Cairns Runner? Cairns to Perth on my last tour to come and see me live.
Wow.
Yeah, and we might be doing something together in the future. I don't know. But yes, great version. I even give it a name check on stage. We play a teeny little bit of it, and then I say, here's the original. And then we
Right.
do that.
But it's so funny because if you listen to the Cyril version now, it's basically 90% kick drum. I mean, it's like the song itself is the same, but it's boop, boop, boop
I
for the
know.
dance floor. You know, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
It is. It's great.
From your Facebook, I realized that you are very active on your social media. Do you post on Facebook every day?
I do. It took me a while to start, but then once I started, I realized that if you're an artist in today's world, if you're not on social media, you are dead in the water. So
Yeah.
I made sure that I'm on there. I did master bass classes. I do Instagram. I reacted to fans and everything. Yeah, I'm quite active. Yes.
Yeah, and they're very appreciative of it. You know, I picked a random Facebook post of yours recently where you talk about books. You know, you've written 8 books like we talk about. I don't read books. This is in your voice. I don't read books. I eat them. I may not have graduated high school, but I'm very well read. And ironically, even though you did not graduate from high school, as we see in the documentary, you got an honorary doctorate from Ruskin University in Cambridge in 2016. How about that, Dr. Quatro?
I actually talk about that on stage. I did not see that coming. For me to be standing on the stage at Cambridge University in a cap and a gown, didn't even graduate high school, and I actually had my speech there, ready to talk about it as I got my honorary. I'm Dr. Quattro, and I had my speech, and I just pushed it aside like you do sometimes. I went,
Right.
don't need to read this, and all I said was, if I can become honorary doctor of music, you can do anything.
True that. One thing that we haven't spoken about as we wrap up is talk about your acting, because in the middle of all this, you start deciding that you want to test out the waters of musical theater, and you get a starring role on the West End in London as Annie Oakley in Annie Get Your Gun.
That was so exciting. Oh, what a thrill. They had kept that, they wouldn't let anybody do that musical for a long time. They kept it under wraps. And I did it at Chichester Festival Theater. And then they had to send over their lawyers to see if they would give me permission to go into the West End. And I got it. And I have a telegram from Irving Berlin.
Oh my God, you're kidding.
Irving Berlin saying, congratulations. These moments, my God Almighty, they're etched in my soul. But I loved doing that. It was a challenge. It was a different kind of thing. But being the musical family that I grew up in, it wasn't such a far reach for me. I did take to it quite naturally.
Wow. And you've written musicals too. You wrote a musical in 1991 about Tallulah Bankhead called Tallulah Who?
Yes, and I played Tallulah, and that was very exciting to see my name on the marquee. Tallulah Who, starring Suzi Quatro as Tallulah, written by.
Wow.
Whoa, feather in my cap.
That's incredible. You know, and still going strong. How, I must ask, having watched the documentary and we talked about the family dynamic, how is your relationship with your sisters these days?
I think we've talked everything through enough times. I think there's a deep love there from everybody. I think we all get it, You know what? My opinion is that your path is your path, and nobody stops you from going down your path. And you have the right to go down your path. That's how I feel about everything. I didn't stop anybody from doing what they want to do, but I got my calling and I took it.
Right. Right. And you're still there. You're still taking it. Talk about your son, Richard, who calls himself LR. You guys are now make music together.
Yeah, we started in 2019. He came to me because he's been in bands since he was 14, same as me. And he wanted to write songs with me. It just came from out of nowhere. And I said, oh, okay. So he showed me 3 different songs. I liked them. I said, I can work with this. We wrote them. We went in the studio. We were making demos, just having fun. And I looked at him and I looked at the engineer and I said, we're making an album.
Wow.
And everybody said, we are. Then it got serious.
That's awesome.
We've been working together ever since. I don't know how it happened. Nobody planned on it. Just happened.
But how great is that to make music with your son?
Oh, yeah.
So you're about to leave, like we've been saying, for Australia, but there's a big tour of the UK and the EU next year in the UK and Germany. You want to give a plug for some of the shows next spring?
Yeah, we're doing 10 big shows in the UK starting in April. The Palladium is on the 15th. I think Glasgow's on the 7th. It's 10 big ones. It's my favorite show, which I love doing. My solo 2-hour show with an interval with screens. So you can talk a little bit. I take you on the musical journey. Everything we've done now, this is all in my show. I play a song at piano. I play the drums with the drummer, and I do an 8-minute bass solo.
And you've said that you're going to keep doing it until you turn around, shake your behind, and nothing happens.
I said that years ago when I was 35. And it hasn't happened yet. But then I altered it when I got to be about 65. And I said, when I turn around and I shake my ass, when I turn around and my ass shakes by itself, then I stop. But now I have this is my serious quote. Now, this is not funny. This one I mean. When I get up on stage and I don't do the show to my standard. then I will know it's time to stop. And nobody will know it but me, but I will know it. When that happens, that hasn't, nowhere near that. When it happens, I'll say, thank you very much. Good night.
And hopefully that is a long, long way in the
Oh,
future.
yeah, I'm still good.
Awesome. Suzi, this was a pleasure. Thank you so much, and good luck
My
with
pleasure.
everything.
And thank you very much.
A big thank you to Suzi Quatro for joining us this week. From Detroit City to the world stage, Suzi's career has defined what it means to rock with power, confidence, and authenticity. To learn more about Suzi's life and work, check out the excellent 2019 documentary Suzi Q, and visit her website at suziquatro.com for her latest tour dates, books, and music. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time for another episode of Rock and Roll High School.
Rock and Roll High School is a presentation of Pure Tone Music, produced by Pete Ganbarg with assistance from Steve Leeds, Joe Pomerico, Dana Stenson, Aaron Manuza, Christina Katsamanides, and Rich Mahan. Please visit our website at rockschoolpodcast.com for past episodes and information on what's coming next. All rights reserved.